What's going on, everyone? I am extremely excited today because we get to return to the frog in Kazuda Blue. Definitely a couple of new additions from set 5 in Kazuda, and in fact, Kazuda Blue looking actually quite appealing because of a couple of different cards now that are working with the vigilance aspect. And really, all of them, not all of them, a lot of them come from set 5, and then a couple of them from older sets that really haven't shown up yet. With that said, a big thank you to my patron guys. We are getting closer and closer to the Galactic Championship, and I can't wait to meet some of you. If you want to check it out down below, feel free to do so. We're going to be doing a little patron meet. Also, I have a TCG player link in the description down below for any set 5 card needs. Let's talk about Kazuda and what we're doing today. So for those of you that don't know, Kazuda's action, we get to basically remove abilities on a unit, and we get to take an extra action after that action. So basically don't lose anything for removing any negative abilities. Now, previously we had cards like Stolen AT Hauler, Millennium Falcon, Contracted Hunter, all excellent options, Fireball as well. From set 5, there are really 2 new additions, and this is where the deck really starts to form. First off, we have Lothwolf. This is just a 2 resource 3/3 Sentinel. This unit can't attack. So the way this works is we remove the Sentinel and can't attack. We get to attack for 3, but then also it acts as a Sentinel when we need it to, which can be good in some certain circumstances. Arguably, the most important is Ogdo Bogdo. This is a 3 resource 5/5, can't attack unless it's damaged, and when it attacks and defeats a unit, you heal 2 damage from this unit. So obviously, remove all abilities, you can attack with it, and then you can even do some cool things like attack. Maybe you're attacking a weaker unit, so it gets a damage on it. Then next turn, you actually don't even need to use Kazuda's action because it'll have a damage on it, and then you can even attack another unit to heal it back up. So pretty interesting there. We also have N1 Starfighter. This is a new 3/2 space unit for cutting heroism. Nice little addition to get earlier power in the space arena. We've got Pounce as well, just a one of. We do have Ogdo and Lothwolf as creatures, which, you know, if we do happen to have those on the board when we deploy Kazuda and go for big hits, Pounce definitely can do some major work. Outside of that, we've got the really nice shell of having Millennium Falcons plus Kazuda's Pilot. We've got Contracted Hunter, which is an amazing addition in Kazuda. The 4/4 Ambusher, but it defeats itself on the start of the regroup phase. Corporate Defense Shuttle is another vigilance card back from Jump to Lightspeed, I believe, but it's a 3/5 2 resource space unit that can attack. Guess what? Excellent in Kazuda because it's a 3/5 space unit for turn 1. That is incredible. Outside of that, we got our late game in Plo Koons and a little bit of disruption in Kira. Han Solo to go on our Millennium Falcons for a little bit of extra power or any other earlier space units, and then a little bit of interaction with You're All Clear Kid, mainly because it's nice, cheap interaction that can actually pump our units, which I am actually really interested in. And then Hotshot Blaster gets some value from our resource pile, a little bit of events to pump in extra damage. Let's dive into this deck and see what we could do today. All right, into the first game here, up against Revan, and I actually really do like this hand. I think I'm going to resource the Kira and the Surprise Strike. In theory, this curve, Revan's going to play out, something like the Secretive Sage. We'll play out the Lothwolf, and then Contracted Hunter's going to be able to ambush and kill off anything that my opponent may have, which is going to be pretty useful. So let's go ahead and pass here. N1 Starfighter can go into the resource pile. We got potentially double Plo Koon, which could be pretty good. But we'll see what my opponent does here on turn 2. There are 2 different directions that this game could have gone, as we could have just ignored the ground arena entirely. And that would have been potentially pretty good, just because we could go all space and our opponent really would have had very little to be able to interact with us. Or, you know, play heavy into the ground arena where we have all of our ambushers so that we can actually prevent my opponent from really doing a bunch of stuff. Fortunately for us, or unfortunately, depending on how you look at it, we are going to be going with the latter here, potentially, because what's going to happen here is I actually want to go with Millennium Falcon so that I can attack with it, and then we could follow that up with a couple of other options later on, which would allow us to drop the Contracted Hunter. The reason why I'm not dropping the Contracted Hunter at the current moment is because if we do, then we would have to use the action on Kazuda here to prevent it from dying. And then we're locked into using the Kazuda action basically on repeat for the rest of the game, which can be a little bit tricky in some cases. So I much prefer being able to, you know, go ahead and at least attack the Millennium Falcon, get a little bit of extra damage in, and then rely on a unit that's going to be in space here. Of course, they got the Darth Tyrannus, which is going to be pretty good here. They're going to get an experience token. That is totally fine. Let's go ahead and drop the Contracted Hunter, ambush, kill the Secretive Sage, just leave it around for us. Now we will be able to attack either one of these units with the Contracted Hunter and kill them off, which is going to be pretty powerful. And then we will make the Contracted Hunter have no negative abilities anymore, and then just deploy on our Millennium Falcon, and then we don't have to pay for it as well. Another Millennium Falcon, a stolen AT hauler, very, very unit heavy right now, but that's okay. That's okay. Plo Koon is going to be excellent up against Revan. Contract Hunter is going to give us a little bit of value here. We will see what my opponent's got as a follow-up. Obviously, killing the Contract Hunter is not something that I would prefer them to do, because Plo Koon does lose coordinate if that's the case. And we don't really have a great way to return that back onto our Contracted Hunter. So I would love if they deployed Revan here. They got Shatter Point, huh? Okay, they're going to defeat a non-force unit, which would be the Contracted Hunter. I am going to just attack for 6. Get some value going there. We will play Plo Koon. I suppose we will trigger the ambush to hit the General Grievous, mainly because my opponent is probably going to deploy Revan here, and then if they deploy Revan, then we will at least have some damage on the General Grievous. They're probably going to kill Plo Koon and then get an experience token over here, which is totally fine. But I would have rather them do that instead of us losing any sort of potential damage here. Okay, this actually looks like really, really good situation for us, because we can attack in 4-6 here. And then we could deploy a couple different options here. I think Millennium Falcon plus a Han would be really excellent, but we'll see what my opponent's got. We could also just deploy another Plo Koon to knock out the General Grievous. But I'm curious to see what my opponent's got. Contracted Hunter can be another option here. Just deploying Han as a unit can kill off Revan. Yeah, I think that's what we'll do, actually. I think we'll just deploy Han, trigger ambush, kill Revan, so they don't keep restoring. They have a couple of powerful units on their side of the battlefield, though. Very, very scary stuff. We are racing at the current moment, and although we have drawn reasonably well, we are kind of in the no events draw here, besides that early surprise strike. But if we were to pick up some events, like a surprise strike or a breaking in, then we could just close out the game here. Talzin's Assassin use the Force, kill the Han. Sure, they're going to be able to get some damage in. Absolutely. And actually, we are threatened by... Oh, there's a surprise strike. There is GG. I was going to say, we could attack for 6, deploy Millennium Falcon, and then kill. But surprise strike actually just wins the game here. So that was totally fine. I think the one change I could have made in that game was actually just mulliganing for a different hand. I was thinking, okay, I could compete on the ground arena, but because they started with Secretive Sage, it really made it tricky for us. Secretive Sage and a General Grievous is like the curve that completely messes up that strategy. Why? Well, they have a shielded unit, and then so they can't actually deal with that all that easily. And then their General Grievous just trades with our Contracted Hunter, which is not exactly where we want to be. But Surprise Strike, of course, ends it. We had a lot of different options to close it out, but as I said, just Kazuda on a space unit these days is just more powerful enough. Like, it's powerful enough in a lot of games. Into our next matchup, we get ourselves a matchup against Red Talzin. Talzin's pretty good. I am going to go heavy into the space arena this game, is what I am looking to do. Mainly because Talzin usually doesn't have that many space units to combat on that way. It's going to really rely on a lot of controlling aspects, which means that we should be able to freely kind of play a bunch of space units and go to town on that in that way. They're going to go Sith Holocron here, which is pretty good. And ooh, look at that. We've got the trifecta of corporate defense shuttles, which is actually pretty sweet because I could go triple corporate defense shuttle here. And if I get Kazuda on this Millennium Falcon, that would be ideal. If we are in a situation where they knock out this Millennium Falcon before I'm able to deploy with Kazuda, which is very possible, I could see them having an open fire or just a drain essence plus a talisman action potentially, which would take them 2 actions, so we could kind of sneak it in. But basically what I'm saying is if they defeat this Millennium Falcon, we are kind of limited in what we can do with Kazuda, and that we probably don't want to deploy him into the ground arena. So we probably just deploy another Millennium Falcon and hope that that's going to live. So my opponent's deciding what they would like to do here. They went ahead and just went for the attack. I will go ahead and deploy Kazuda onto the Millennium Falcon here, just to make sure that it can't be killed anymore. Now that is a 7/7. They can force throw and it can deal a lot to it. Okay, yeah, that is definitely going to deal a nice chunk here. Force throw plus discarding their card definitely does some work, but then we can just go ahead and deploy another Millennium Falcon here, and we're still in a pretty good spot. Attack for another 3, and there's a Fireball plus a Plo Koon. I will resource one of the corporate defense shuttles, and I wasn't necessarily thinking that they would be able to deal with it all that easily, but force throw plus discarding one of their own high toughness cards or high mana value cards is a way to do it. Let's go ahead and use Kazuda's action here. Just get in for 3. They're going to play Old Daka. Are they going to defeat the Karis? I'd imagine it's not a bad thing to do here. No, they are not. All right, let's go ahead and attack in for 3 then. And let's go ahead and play Plo Koon and pass on the ambush. We're passing on the ambush because if we attack Talzin, yes, they could attack Plo Koon and trade. And yes, we do get Talzin off the board, but this makes it a little bit more tricky for my opponent to deal with. Because now, can they attack with Talzin? I would probably say no. Like, you really can't attack with Talzin. They did anyways. I was thinking they'd have to take initiative to attack with Old Daka, and that gives us a free action here. But, well, this works out pretty nicely for us. Pounce obviously pretty bad, but now we get to attack with Plo Koon for a massive 6 points of damage. I really don't think they should have attacked with Talzin there. They take initiative there. They kill our Plo Koon with Old Daka. We attack with Millennium Falcon, and then if they have a way to deal with this corporate defense shuttle, we're actually in a little bit of a trouble spot because they happen to have that force throw at a clutch moment. But outside of that, I mean, now I don't know of anything that my opponent could do to win the game. Of course, if we drew Surprise Strike, Breaking Ins, those types of things, then it could have completely changed the nature of the game. But, well, yeah, Force Throw Darth Tyrannus doesn't actually do anything because we can just knock in with that shuttle, and that is GG. Double Force Throw, that's pretty much the only way that they could even keep up with us. If they didn't have Force Throw, then the game would have been completely over because we would have just had that Kazuda sitting on that unit. Because again, it's a leader unit, which means if we have another unit, then Power that Darkseid can't deal with it, which means our opponent kind of needs Rivals Fall, which is too late in the game to deal with us. Next matchup, we got ourselves the Han Yellow Force variant. We're going to mulligan this hand. It's not horrible, but it's not great by any means. This is a little bit of a more interesting hand, in my opinion. I'm actually going to resource the Kira and the Plo Koon. I do like having early space units, and I am going to drop in that corporate defense shuttle here on turn 1. They're going to Spark a Rebellion us, but honestly, our hand is pretty redundant. Like, if they want to get rid of the Han, that's fine. Then we have N1 Starfighter and the... Oh, even better. We ended up picking up the Millennium Falcon, which is absolutely fantastic. Now, I will just go ahead and use Kazuda's action on the corporate defense shuttle, even though this means I have to pay for the Millennium Falcon. Because, at least in the current moment, we don't really care about that other resource here. So now we're going to drop in the Millennium Falcon, and I am pretty happy with our state in the game. Pass. Contracted Hunter could be a nice option. Fireball could be a nice option. I think I'm going to just resource this M1 Starfighter. We'll pay 1 resource for the Millennium Falcon, and we'll see what my opponent wants to do. As a follow-up, Contracted Hunter and Fireball both could just be options, but we're really just going into the space arena here. Force Throw, we will obviously get rid of the You're All Clear kid here. Let's see what my opponent wants to do with the 2 damage with Force Throw. Gonna hit the corporate defense shuttle, huh? All right, well, we will make it so that corporate defense shuttle can attack in. And I'm looking to pilot this onto our Millennium Falcon. They're going to gain the force, huh? All right, let's go ahead and pilot this onto the Millennium Falcon. That is a Kiadi. Okay, that is totally fine. I think it is a pretty easy contracted hunter just to balance out the board a little bit. I could go with Fireball, put more pressure on, but that is kind of going all eggs into the one basket of, well, hopefully they don't deal with some of our units over here. But I do like this plan a little bit better. Lothwolf and Pounce, pretty mediocre here. We're not even using the frog. We're not even using the frog, guys. We are just for space aggression here with Kazuda. And my opponent, I mean, they're kind of in a tricky spot. They haven't really used Han's action at all. They start with Spark of Rebellion into Vernestra. They have another Force Throw, which doesn't even do anything really. I feel like my opponent should be force throwing themselves, because that probably, they probably have bigger units to hit, and I could see them killing off some units. I think they would have definitely been in a better spot if they were force throwing themselves. I'm almost certain that they have at least have like 4 drops and things like that to be able to force throw away, but that's fine. Go ahead and attack in for 6. We're gonna put a Podameron into play. We will attack in for 3. And they're going to claim initiative. We will deploy out to the L3 pass. Get another L3 here. I suppose here they could defeat an upgrade. Deal to... There's a couple different options. Oh, I didn't actually remove the abilities on the Millennium Falcon. Whoops, that just spent a resource for no reason. But I could have just claimed initiative, I suppose, because our opponent had 0 resources. That would have definitely been the better play, obviously. Especially since we won't be able to... Yeah, they just discarded a bunch of cards. They're going to defeat, deal 2 to the L3, and then attack it. And then we are left with... Oh, they're going to make us discard as well. That's actually... That was weird. What did they deal 2 to? The Corporate Defense Shuttle? Oh, well, I mean... It is GG. It was difficult for the opponent to win the game anyways. I was thinking that they were going to attack... defeat the upgrade, deal to the L3, so then the L3 dies, Millennium Falcon no longer can win the game in a single attack, and then we deploy Plo Koon, kill off the Kiadi Mundi, and then, or just take initiative, and then we probably win on the next turn, because we can't use Kazuda's action to make Corporate Defense Shuttle attack. But, yeah, I mean, if my opponent had, my opponent looks like they had pretty cheap cards, but if they, like, forced through the Bendu, then they would have had a definite, real chance at winning this game. Which is, again, one of the only ways that we have a chance, that opponents have a chance, is force throw. Force throw is literally the decider, guys. And between this one and our previous opponent, they both had multiple force throws in the earlier stages of the game, which is really important to even have a chance. Into our next game, we got ourselves the Corporate Defense Shuttle on turn 1, which does look pretty good. But I think I'm going to go with the N1 Starfighter instead. And the reason I'm doing that is because... if we deploy one of these other units here, like Ogdo Bogdo, Contracted Hunter, most likely the Contracted Hunter, then we wouldn't be able to attack with a Corporate Defense Shuttle, because we would have to use Kazuda's action on Contracted Hunter so that it doesn't just immediately die. In this case, though, what I will do is probably just play out the Ogdo Bogdo. I think that's what I'm going to do here. Drop a big ol' frog on our opponent's faces. Seems pretty good. They can use multiple attacks here to attack the frog. They have immediately readied up Vernestra. They're probably just going to ignore my frog. And we'll see if they have a thing to bounce the Vernestra and play a 2-drop, which wouldn't be like horrible. Another Plo Koon, L3 gonna go... Actually... No, I think I do want to get the Contracted Hunter down. We're gonna go ahead and make it so the Ogdo Bogdo can attack and just get in for 5. We are just going to get in damage. That is the name of the game here. And then we're going to rely on our ambushers here, potentially, to do some work. Let's go ahead and deploy Kazuda as a pilot here on the N1 Starfighter. And we'll see if they utilize Qui-Gon Jinn's action here. The Sentinel and Jedi Sentinel does actually put up a little bit of a wall here, which is pretty nice for them. But I'm just going to attack here, and we can remove the abilities on Ogdo. And then we'll play out a corporate defense shuttle. And I mean, my opponent's got an okay hand here to deal with what we got going on a little bit. Mainly because the Sentinel does actually trade with Contracted Hunter, which I don't really want to happen. Let's go ahead and ambush that Jedi Sentinel. And now, I mean, my opponent is in a little bit of trouble because they can only deal 5. They've got timely reinforcements to what? Deal with the Platoon. Okay, we will just make it so that both these guys can attack here. Attack for 3, and then, of course, if they attack, then we just win the game on the following turn. Otherwise, okay, we're just going to claim initiative. Yeah, they can use something, but it doesn't matter. We just win the game here. I was thinking that maybe they could keep putting up Sentinels with the Jedi Sentinel and the Obi-Wan. They didn't use their Qui-Gon Jinn action at all, and our frog just made them so terribly scared. But honestly, we probably could have just gone full on space and rushed them down again. People are just not really built for space decks right now, which is why it's pretty critical to play just decks like, you know, the Kiras and the more controlling Talzins, and have options to deal with a lot of space units in the event side of things. Because if you're playing the Force units, you're going to be a ground focused deck because you need to be able to attack with Force units, and space units aren't Force units. So space has just been super strong. Into our next matchup, and I do quite like this hand actually. I'm going to resource the Hot Shot Blaster and the N1 Starfighter, but up against Boba Fett, this is a deck that I do think is going to have quite a few space units. So I do like having a high toughness unit here, period, just because, well, maybe I'm completely wrong. Maybe I'm just completely wrong. They've got double First Order Stormtroopers, which is actually very aggressive. That is about as aggressive as you get, and we don't really have an answer for that. So we may just end up completely getting rushed down here. Let's go ahead and just take some damage on the corporate defense shuttle. We will take a little bit of damage here. We'll play out a Millennium Falcon, and then my opponent, yes, they can attack. We'll take a little bit more damage. I suppose we'll deal 1 to our Millennium Falcon here. They have no play. Okay, well, that's actually really good for us. Let's go ahead and just make it so the corporate defense shuttle can attack, and then I will deploy Kazuda as a pilot onto the Millennium Falcon, and we are just rushing them down. We are not in the business of trying to play this back and forth, trade with your units type of situation. We're going to surprise strike in for 6. Now, they do have Data Vault, which does make this a little bit more tricky for sure. I suppose we'll just take 1 to the base. We'll just keep taking 1 to the base at the current moment. I probably should have just been doing this anyways. There is 7 damage with the Millennium Falcon, but I have a feeling Commandeer is going to be pretty useful in this game. We will take another 1 to the base, and then we'll play out the N1 Starfighter, and we'll see what my opponent's got. Okay, Stolen AT Hauler is probably the resource. Han Solo is an absolute disgusting draw, honestly. It is so good here. Commandeer is also very good, so I'm happy about that one. Honestly, though, Han Solo is about as good of a draw as we can get, because it's going to give +3/+3 and an immediate attack to the Millennium Falcon and permanent HP boost, which is really quite important. And in fact, I am just going to Han Solo up the Millennium Falcon, because now, I mean, we can attack with a corporate defense shuttle, but if they do anything here, we just claim initiative. Yep, we just claim initiative, and then we just attack in with the Millennium Falcon, and it's GG. This is what I meant by the Han Solo just being so powerful. And honestly, again, this is how we win most games, is we just drop Kazuda on a Millennium Falcon and we just go to town. Unless your opponent has power on the dark side, really there's very few ways to deal with this. Of course, your opponent could have like a way to defeat an upgrade, but that's not usually in the main deck in a lot of cases. So just something to think about. Into the next game, and we're doing a rematch here up against the Boba Fett. I'm going to resource the Han because I'm planning on going with Lothwolf this game. And if my opponent has, let's say, like a space unit, we potentially could use the You're All Clear kit. I do think that's going to be pretty good. We're going to claim initiative and then be able to just immediately deal with this General Pride here. And I actually will kill off the Pride, just because it's just way easier to be a little bit more convenient. Get the Millennium Falcon down. They've got triple first order Stormtrooper. My goodness. That's not something you really see a lot of the time, but okay. We're going to attack in for 3. I'll let my opponent hit the base if they want. That is crazy, by the way. That is like as good of a return draw as you could possibly get after the fact, by the way. Yeah, absolute disgusting pickup there, but that's okay. Let's go ahead and just attack in for 7 here. Choose nothing here. We'll take another damage here. We'll play out an Ogdo Bogdo, and then we will pass the turn. Actually, we can deal 1 damage to the Ogdo Bogdo and then claim initiative here. Contracted Hunter. I mean, honestly, a lot of these cards look really good. Plo Koon could potentially be pretty good. But what I can do here is, you're all clear, kid, the droid missile platform. Give an experience token over to the... I suppose it could be the Ogdo Bogdo. Just make it a 6/6. We can deal 3 indirect damage. We'll deal actually 2 over here and then 1 to our Millennium Falcon. Deal 1 here. And then my opponent, they can decide what to do next. Disabling Fang Fighter. Get rid of the Kazuda. Okay. Yeah. I mean, they have the main deck Disabling Fang Fighter, I suppose. So that does work out for them. We will heal up 2 on our units here. They can attack with a First Order Stormtrooper. We will take 1 to the base. Take 1 again. So now Contracted Hunter doesn't really do anything because my opponent can just... Yeah, I mean, we can't really afford them to have a space unit right now. We need to trade off here. Take 1 damage here, and then we will just use Contracted Hunter, even though it's going to die. My opponent having the Disabling Fang Fighter really messing us up because we cannot use the Kazuda action here, which is really, really unfortunate. That said, we still do have the Ogdo Bogdo, which is going to be pretty good in this spot. If they have a space unit in which they can... Oh, they're going to pass, huh? They're going to pass. Interesting. Let's go Millennium Falcon. Interesting. Do they like Overwhelming Barrage? I think that's like the only way we lose, huh? I think we should go a Hotshot Blaster trade with Boba Fett, because if they have Overwhelming Barrage, it's really bad for us. That's like really, really bad for us. The triple First Order Stormtrooper completely changed the game. Well, First Order Stormtrooper plus the Disabling Fang Fighter. If they didn't have the Disabling Fang Fighter to get rid of the Kazuda, I literally just spoke about this, by the way. Most people don't have main deck upgrade hate, but my opponent is playing that main deck upgrade hate. To deal with Kazuda, it was super, super good. Defeat Boba, Hotshot Blaster. Yeah, opponent was not looking at the Hotshot Blaster. They're going to claim initiative, and it looks like my opponent did have probably exactly what I was saying earlier, which is, and here I probably just want to keep everything. They've got open fire, sure. Let's just drop in Ogdo Bogdo here, and I think we'll put a Hotshot Blaster on Ogdo. Pass. Another Ogdo Bogdo, Contracted Hunter. We'll resource the Contracted Hunter. My opponent playing a little bit more of the controlling style. They got Emperor Palpatine now, huh? Pretty crazy. I don't really know. Like the cards that my opponent's playing are like, sure, I guess. Just not really expecting my opponent to be playing a lot of these cards. Lothwolf, sure, resource that. I think we're definitely losing at this stage of the game. My opponent's got all the answers here, and that is GG. Into the next one here, and the final one. We got ourselves a pretty good hand. I actually really do like this. I'm going to resource the L3, and probably the Kira. I like having, even though Kira can be pretty good, I like having these 2 events up against an Obi-Wan here. Ooh, that is not what I want to see. That is probably the least favorite thing to see here. I think the You're All Clear kid's probably going to be pretty mediocre. I don't think my opponent's really going to have things to kill. And I think my opponent's really going to be relying on this Jedi Consular to generate a bunch of value for them. And then hopefully they don't deploy like Lukes and things to just knock out all my units. That's what I'm hoping that they don't do. But I'm not going to hold out too much hope for that. Here we have the Han, which is nice. Blue leader, huh? I mean, we are going to kill blue leader, so they can't put an experience token on it. That is definitely what we're going to be doing. Claim initiative here. They're not going to keep the force to use the Jedi Consular here, which is a little bit surprising. Another Millennium Falcon. I think I'm going to resource that. Actually, I think I'm going to resource the N1 Starfighter. Because what I want to do is pay one resource here. Use Kazuda's action. Attack in with the corporate defense shuttle, deploy Millennium Falcon, because I had to pay one for the Millennium Falcon unit here. I couldn't go like Han plus Surprise Strike, which would have been fantastic, but instead this is going to give me the option. I'm going to deploy Kazuda as a pilot on the Millennium Falcon, and my opponent, I mean, they could have like a takedown, but that's usually not what people are playing in Obi-Wan. Usually they're playing Shatterpoint in that slot. Which means that Shatterpoint actually is worse than Takedown in this spot because of the leader mechanic here. So now we get to attack in, remove the abilities here. We play the Millennium Falcon, and then next turn we have both of these available with another Millennium Falcon, which makes Han even stronger. So definitely don't really care about what my opponent can do here over with their experience tokens and such. The Jedi Consular was scary to me because I was worried that they would be able to like deploy Luke this turn as an example. But my opponent, even if they deploy Luke, doesn't actually get that much value off of it. So I'm not really all that worried here. Because now what we can do is, and I think we surprise strike here with Millennium Falcon to reduce or to remove the corporate defense shuttle abilities. My opponent said they're drawing dead, which, I mean, I guess if you are drawing dead, you may as well concede. But yeah, let's go ahead and remove that ability. Oh, I should remove the Millennium Falcon ability as well. That was just a little bit of a misclick there. But we're doing it this way because I want to make sure my corporate defense shuttle can attack this turn. And then now I just... Okay, they have Keller and Beck here. Now I just use Han Solo's pilot to win the game. Keller and Beck can't pull anything that I know of that can deal with both corporate defense shuttle and the Millennium Falcon here. Yep, so we pilot over here, attack for 6, and then we attack for 3. GG. Pretty quick game there. Pretty quick game. Wow. Yeah, we just kind of dominated every single game with the exception of that Boba Fett. And that Boba Fett was mainly because they had the triple one drop, which definitely skewed the decision of the game, and also the disabling Fang Fighter. The combination of the two was very, very interesting and definitely put our opponent in the lead. And of course, they had the better late game. So pretty good stuff, though. Kazuda Blue, guys. All right, what did we learn with Kazuda, guys? Well, honestly, the more I play this deck, the more I feel like set 5 doesn't really change it, which is kind of funny to think about. But well, I should say, here's what I should modify that. Set 5 does change it a lot, but not for the reasons of putting the Frog and Lothwolf and those types of cards in our deck. What it changes is what people are playing, and a lot of people are playing decks that can't actually deal with Kazuda right now. Why? Because Kazuda has this unique effect of being able to go heavy into space, but then have space units that are also leader units because of the piloting aspect on Kazuda. It's very similar to like Han 4, right? That's another option that you can go all space and deploy something and get a lot of value there. When you have those types of decks, it really, really does put your opponent in a bad spot. And that's something that a lot of decks just can't deal with right now. And because of that, things like the Millennium Falcons getting down and then deploying Kazuda onto them just win the game straight up. The Frog did come into play a couple of games. The Lothwolf, a little bit so. I'm not actually 100% convinced by the Lothwolf. The N1 Starfighter is actually one of the better additions to the deck. To be honest, a nice turn 1 play. That's going to be a 3-2. That isn't necessarily a Mercenary Gunship or anything like that, even though Mercenary Gunship is reasonable to play. I do think you could probably get rid of the Kira in this deck. And if you wanted to, you could actually go all in and remove Plo Koon and Contracted Hunter and go even more heavy into space, remove the Frog and Lothwolf and just go all in into the space arena, which I think would also be just perfectly reasonable to do, mainly because again our opponents don't really have ways to deal with it unless they get to sideboard games. And even if they're getting to sideboard games, they have to have upgrade removal for Kazuda, and if they're trying to play around that, then we can always just deploy Kazuda as a unit. So if they shift their deck too much towards interacting, we have different angles to attack, but usually on game one, always you're deploying Kazuda as a pilot because your opponent just does not have many ways to deal with a lot of things on your battlefield when you have a leader unit. One of the few ways that really does deal with it is the force throw, discarding a massive unit. And even if they do have it better be a 7-drop or more usually, because if you're deploying Kazuda on like Millennium Falcon, that is a 7 toughness unit, which is really tough. Or even let's say you're going on a corporate defense shuttle, that is a 8 toughness unit. Granted, that's not something you want to do very often because you won't be able to attack with it for a while, but just something to think about here with Kazuda. Very, very fun, very, very aggressive, and you all know that I love doing that. So thanks for watching. Let me know what you think in the comments down below, and I'll see you all for the next one.